We shook hands over a lie on a Wednesday that tasted like rain. Milo had just told his older sister, whose wedding was in 3 weeks, that he was finally seeing someone. He said it to stop the pitying looks and the relentless setups that made him feel like a problem to be solved. Unfortunately, the someone he was finally seeing did not exist. Not until his eyes found me in the florist shop, wrists ink-smudged from writing place cards, and he asked a question I'd only heard in movies. "Could you be my girlfriend?" he said, then tripped over it.
Fake.
Just, it's complicated. I laughed because what else do you do when a gorgeous, clearly panicked man asks you to become a fiction? He looked like kindness that hadn't slept, jaw shadowed, suit jacket holding more weather than fabric. I should have said no. Instead I said, I charge in pastries and reasonable boundaries. We made a contract on a paper napkin. Attend the wedding events, hold hands when necessary, no kissing without asking, safe word, geranium. My name, Layla, looked steadier in his handwriting than in mine. He promised my flower shop would get the centerpiece order. I promised to be convincing. And hey, if you're enjoying these stories, don't forget to like and subscribe and comment where you're watching from so I know who's part of this journey. Our first rehearsal was coffee at a corner table, an audience of potted herbs between us. We built a shared history like careful scaffolding. First meeting at the farmer's market, aisle of late peaches. First argument about how to fold fitted sheets, you don't. First inside joke about the barista who spelled every name as if it were a secret code. He asked about my real life and I about his, and we each told 80% of the truth. Milo worked in conflict mediation, which felt like the universe's grim little joke. He could broker peace between warring departments, yet at home, peace had a specific shape. His sister's approval, his mother's relief, his own heart quiet enough to work. I confessed I was good with plants and terrible with endings. I'd recently left a relationship that kept me small, as if love were a studio apartment without windows. We practiced hand-holding. It was absurdly intimate, how much a palm could say. His was warm, ground-steady, a yes that waited for mine. We should decide on a song, he said, in case they ask how we knew. We knew by the way the room softened, I said, and he wrote it down like he might forget. The first family dinner was a bright maze of questions. His sister, Anna, hosted like a general marshalling joy. Every candle lit, every plate brimming, love arranged in centerpieces I designed that afternoon. Gentle, low, all tender edges. So this is the famous Layla, she said, hugging me for exactly 2 seconds longer than strangers do. His mother, Mara, had an expression like weather deciding, but when Milo offered to help with the dishes and I joined without asking, the weather shifted. I learned 6 names in 20 minutes and 3 family legends in 10. Milo deflected the meaner curiosity like a professional goalkeeper. When an uncle asked how we finally got serious, Milo's fingers found mine under the table. I felt his pulse like an answered door. We stopped performing for ghosts, he said, and I almost forgot we were lying. Because that was true for both of us. After dessert, Anna caught me at the sink. He smiles differently with you, she said. Like there's room. My throat tightened at the simple mercy of it. I wanted to say, he's just practicing, but something in me refused to bruise the moment. We debriefed in my shop, where night lived softly in glass. I watered the eucalyptus swags as if their silver coins could pay our courage forward. Your family is a lot, I said. They're everything, he answered, then winced. Sometimes everything is heavy. We adjusted the napkin contract. New clauses. We would share 3 honest fears before the wedding. We would not weaponize silence. If either of us felt the ground tilt, we would say geranium and step outside. He took a pen to the paper with ceremonial gravity, like signing a treaty. His wrist brushed mine. It felt like the start of a weather pattern I didn't know how to predict but desperately wanted to keep. Outside, the street shook off rain. He walked me home, not because a fake boyfriend should, but because a good person would. At my door, the contract's 3rd rule glowed between us. No kissing without asking.
He didn't ask.
Neither did I. We said goodnight with our foreheads almost touching, like a promise made by breath. Wedding week arrived like a marching band. There were fittings, tastings, a rehearsal that felt like a heist of happiness. I pinned boutonnieres on men who joked to hide their nerves and arranged ribbons on chairs like soft exclamation points. Milo and I executed small romances flawlessly, shared glances, fingers to sleeve, laughter that rung true because it was. The family relaxed into us, as if we'd always been a page in their book. But fiction is a fragile thing. My ex, Evan, texted for the first time in months, a bland apology wearing cologne. Saw your flowers on Anna's page. Congrats on the new guy. We should talk. The words slid through me like cold tea. I did not respond. I told Milo instead, watched the concern gather behind his eyes like stormlight. Do you want me to handle it? He asked. No, I said, because I wanted to handle myself. But thank you for asking. The thanks was heavier than it looked. It meant nobody ever asked before. The rehearsal dinner was a kaleidoscope of speeches. Milo's father, who rarely spoke in crowds, stood and described the day Anna learned to ride a bike, how she fell and fell until she didn't. That's what family is, he said. The space to wobble without shame. I felt the wobble in my bones. Milo squeezed my knee. After, Anna dragged me to the photo booth. Tell me the real story of how you met, she whispered, mischief bright. I began our script, the peaches, the fitted sheet, but then slipped. He looked like kindness that hadn't slept. Ah, she said, satisfied. That's not script. That's poetry. Keep him. When we left, a shape leaned against the brick wall near the valet stand. Evan, in a coat he wore like a warning. Layla, he said, stepping forward. Milo moved almost imperceptibly, placing himself between us while still leaving me the front. It was choreography, respect as dance. I just want to talk, Evan added. We're done talking, I said. My voice surprised me, steady as a held note. Please don't contact me again. He scoffed past me to Milo. And you are? Someone who knows what no means, Milo answered, not unkindly, and opened the car door. We didn't discuss Evan in the car. We talked about the playlist for tomorrow's preparations and whether daisies are underrated. They are not. They're exactly rated. But when he walked me to my building, he stopped under the awning's soft hum and said, I know I said I'd handle it if you wanted, but watching you do it yourself felt like watching a door unlock. I'm tired of being polite to the wrong things, I said. And wildly polite to the right ones, he answered, smiling. We hovered again at the edge of Rule 3. I'm asking, he said at last, voice careful. May I kiss you? One real kiss, under this fake sign. He nodded up at the awning where the cafés neon buzzed. I didn't say geranium. I said, yes. The kiss was not fireworks. It was a porch light turning on after a long day. It was remarkable in its tenderness, the way he waited for me inside it, leaving space for my whole self. We stepped back like people who'd returned from the same place at the same time and needed to memorize the route. Morning unfurled in ribbon curls. I delivered bouquets with a reverence bordering on prayer, and Milo handled logistics like a conductor reading the air. We barely had time to look at each other except in practiced glances that now held a private ember. When Anna came down the steps in her dress, something in the room sighed, like the house itself approved. During photos, an aunt asked us to stand like you love each other, which would have been funny if it hadn't made my hands tremble. Milo steadied them with his. I felt the difference between rehearsal and performance. Reality had crept into our choreography and planted roots. At the ceremony, vows floated like lanterns. I choose you in crowded rooms and quiet kitchens, Anna said. I choose you on hard Tuesdays. Milo's eyes were wet. I touched his sleeve and didn't need to pretend. When the kiss cheered the room into celebration, his smile found mine with something like astonishment, as if he'd just witnessed proof that love survives formality. Then came the moment I'd feared without naming, the bouquet toss. Anna wouldn't let me hide near the DJ table. Tradition only has power if it's fun, she insisted, her laughter making everyone's courage taller. I joined the circle of hopefuls, amused and uneasy. The bouquet arced like a small comet. A cousin leaped. Petals flew. Chaos reigned. Somehow the bouquet landed against my chest, as if the room had exhaled it into me. People shouted. Cameras flashed. Across the dance floor, Milo looked equal parts delighted and terrified. A chant began. Speech. Speech. Because families love to throw you into the river to see if you can swim. I stepped up to the mic with the bouquet cradled like a baby bird. I run a flower shop, I said. So, I can confirm this is an excellent bouquet. As for the rest, I don't know about destiny. I do know about choice. I left someplace small to make room for something kind. And lately, kindness has a name. I didn't look at him.
I didn't have to.
The room did. It made a sound I will keep in my pocket for years. We escaped to the courtyard where night pooled around the fairy lights. My heels dangled from my fingers. His tie hung in surrender. The music inside blurred into a friendly thrum. That was brave, he said. So, was asking a stranger to be a story, I said. We stood in that soft between, where decisions begin. Layla, he said, and my name felt like a key on his tongue. I don't want to give this back when the clock strikes midnight on our contract. Me neither, I answered. Simple as door hinges. He grinned. All ruinous relief. Then let's amend the napkin. He pulled it from his wallet, creased, ink bloomed, wholly from use, and added a final line. If either party unexpectedly falls in love, they will inform the other immediately and renegotiate for forever. He signed it, handed me the pen. Somewhere, a new song lifted. I wrote my name beneath his, looked up, and felt the world align like vases on a mantel. Consider me informed, I said, and we walked back in hand, to tell the truth to the people who had unknowingly wanted it for us all along. We didn't announce it with trumpets. We told Anna first, because she'd been looking at us like someone who already knew the ending and was patiently waiting for us to catch up. She listened, chin in hand, veil of exhaustion slipping as joy woke her face. So you're real, she said, then flung her arms around us both with the kind of hug that upgrades a day. I was going to keep you anyway, she whispered in my ear. But I'm glad I don't have to lie to Mom. Mara was slower weather. She'd built elaborate hopes around stability and tradition, the kind of scaffolding that keeps a house up but blocks windows. Milo told her gently, the way he negotiated business feuds, offering dignity first, then clarity. We started as a favor, he said. We became a choice. Mara studied our hands, threaded like an intention. My son loves too carefully, she murmured, not unkindly. He learned that from me. Then, after a breath, practice loving less carefully. I want to watch. It was permission disguised as teasing and also an apology for old winter. We said yes to both. We gave the napkin treaty a ridiculous frame, gold, ornate, thrift store drama, and hung it behind the shop counter, tiny words under glass like a reliquary of first courage. Customers asked. We told a shorter version. Some cried. One elderly man bought a succulent and called it geranium because he liked the idea of a safe word for life. Days loosened into shared routines. I taught Milo the language of stems, how peonies sulk without warm water, how roses drink better if you cut them on the bias, how eucalyptus forgives clumsy hands. He taught me the human version, how to de-escalate the couple arguing over cake flavors, how to ask a delivery driver about his sore shoulder and mean it, how to hear a complaint as a story wanting softer shoes. It was domestic and ordinary, and therefore sacred. He fixed the bell above the door so it jingled less like panic. I labeled our lunches in the staff fridge, with polite threats. Our phones learned each other's faces. Sometimes he worked at the back table while I arranged a funeral spray, and we would be alone together among people we were trying to honor, careful with our silence, until it was time to laugh again. Love reveals the rooms you forgot to clean. Mine was resentment, small, tidy piles from old years when I apologized for taking up space. It dusted everything if I didn't check it. Milo's uncleaned room was avoidance, disguised as diplomacy. He could suture any conflict except his own fear of causing one. We decided to keep the clauses that saved us, share 3 honest fears, No weaponizing silence. Call geranium if the ground tilts. Our first wobble arrived with a harmless errand. Anna asked if I could do last-minute flowers for a work dinner that included a city official who might one day fund Milo's nonprofit mediation clinic. Don't comp it, Milo said quickly. Charge full price. Your work is worth it. I know, I said, bristling because I also knew. He heard the bristle and flinched. I didn't mean. I know, I repeated, sharper. The air thinned. He took a breath, looked at the ridiculous gold frame, and said, geranium. We stepped outside, shared a mandarin like he'd once described, and rewound. He apologized for rushing to teach what I already practiced. I admitted the old studio apartment of my heart still measured every invoice against past belittling. We walked back and holding the same fruit peel, ridiculous and a little miraculous. Evan resurfaced with pettier timing, commenting from burner accounts on the shop's posts, sliding insinuations into DMs I didn't read, but knew by smell. I reported, blocked, moved on, until a bouquet arrived without a card. Thorny roses wired too tight, a florist's way of saying, hurt yourself trying. I recognized the style. He'd once learned it to impress me. I stood with the box open and felt a blast of old air. Milo came around the counter, didn't touch anything, only put himself near. What do you need? He asked. Not saving, I said, shaking, but standing with. Standing is what I do, he said simply. We photographed the bouquet, logged it, disposed of it without ceremony. Later, I filed a report with screenshots and a clean, factual timeline. My hand steadied as I typed. The past didn't get to be folklore. It got to be paperwork. When we were done, Milo toggled the bell so the door chimed like a small celebration, then kissed the back of my hand as if I'd wrestled a river. I like the librarian version of you, he joked. All quiet fury and labels. I laughed for the first time that afternoon. The laugh stayed. Mara invited me to brunch, just me, and Panic put on a sundress. We met at a place with table plants so lush they could have been cousins. She wore a scarf the color of patience. I was too careful with Milo, she began, stirring nothing in her cup. His father traveled. I became a weather system that never risked a storm. He learned to negotiate with clouds. I listened, the way her son does when someone tells the truth crooked first. I think you did your best with the map you had, I said. He loves like a cartographer. It's beautiful. She smiled, surprised, then slid an envelope toward me. Inside, photos of Milo through the years, gap-toothed pirate, teenager at a protest, 20-something laughing with paint on his nose. I keep albums, she said softly. I would like you to help me make new pages. It was not a test. It was a welcome laid in paper. I promised I would. On the walk back, I sent Milo a picture of toddler him scowling at a cupcake and wrote, "Explain this injustice." He replied, "They sang too loud." I preferred treaties to chants even then. We made a ritual of firsts. First grocery trip as an admission of forever. He bought 3 kinds of jam as if fidelity should be sweet in options. I bought a ridiculous candle that smelled like a mossy library. First real fight. I forgot to call when a delivery ran late. He imagined the worst because care sometimes wears fear's jacket. We named it, soothed it, right-sized it. First vacation plan. A cabin near a river that translated rocks into song. The drawer at the library cafe, the one with shared words, kept growing its congregation. We visited together and left a new sign in tidy lettering. Take what you need, leave what you can, write what you wish someone had said, and circle back if you changed your mind. A teenager wrote, "I'm not broken, I'm practicing," and we both wanted to applaud. On Thursdays, strangers still traded bravery under that little roof. We added tiny envelopes for people who wanted privacy. The barista started tucking biscotti there for emergencies. We were building, without quite meaning to, a micro-neighborhood for feelings that had nowhere else to sit. When we walked out into the afternoon, Milo linked our pinkies the way kids swear oaths. I felt absurdly, perfectly married to the day. The clinic became real in a flurry of grant deadlines and anxious furniture. Milo found a storefront with tall windows and a stubborn radiator. I sourced plants that forgave neglect and thrived under fluorescent apologies. We painted the walls a color we named Soft Yes. Volunteers appeared, the way the good kind always do. A retired judge with a laugh like a gavel, a grad student who believed spreadsheets could cure rivers. Opening day, someone scrawled, "Argue here," on the sidewalk in chalk with an arrow pointing inside. Two neighbors came in, ready to battle about trash bins. They left an hour later with a calendar, a handshake, and a plan to share a snow shovel. Milo looked wrecked and radiant, like somebody who had just pushed the world a degree toward breathable. That night we ate greasy joy on the clinic's floor, backs against Soft Yes, feet touching. "I want to build a place where people tell the truth early," he said, "before they have to shout it." "Me too," I said. "With flowers." "With everything," he answered, and I knew he meant houses and songs and Tuesdays and us. Every love story tests its joints. Our test arrived disguised as opportunity. A big hotel chain offered the shop a year-long contract. Weddings, conferences, lobby arrangements. It would triple revenue and quarter my soul. The contract required a consistent neutral aesthetic. Translation: beige forever. It also demanded exclusivity that would force me to ditch smaller clients who'd kept me alive in thin months. Milo, practical and eager to see me win, said, "We can hire staff, scale gently, keep your style at the edges."
He meant well.
My stomach went cold anyway. Old apartments, small windows. I said nothing for 2 days, which is exactly what our frame forbade. On the third day, he set mandarins on the counter like tiny suns and said, "I miss you." "I'm here," I protested. "You're across the street behind glass," he said, not accusing. "Come back." We walked to the river and laid the contract between us on the bench like a patient. I told the whole truth. I didn't want to be impressive if it meant becoming invisible. He listened until the papers exhaled. "Turn it down," he said at last, relief and pride elbowing in his voice. "Let's design bigness that fits you." I wrote a letter to the hotel that felt like taking off tight shoes. I recommended 3 other florists and kept my Saturdays open for people who wanted wild edges. Then I did something that would have terrified old me. I raised my prices to match my care. Some clients left, kindly. New ones arrived, equally kind. The shop breathed at a healthy pace, and my work bloomed taller because I wasn't trimming it to fit a beige vase. We celebrated with a dinner we couldn't afford but needed to remember. The waiter asked if it was a special occasion. Milo said, yes. She chose her joy. When dessert came, the plate read in chocolate script, "To forever renegotiations." On our walk home, we passed the café's window. Inside, a couple sat shoulder to shoulder, heads bent over the drawer. "We started something," Milo whispered. "We started noticing," I said, and he kissed me for that, an appreciative, grateful kiss, like clapping for a tiny orchestra that nailed the quiet parts. The season tilted toward warm. Our apartment learned our names. The couch kept my shape. The kitchen knew his rush hour feet. The closet negotiated fairly. On a Sunday, Mara brought over a box labeled for new pages, and we built the first album together. Wedding candid of us laughing at nothing, a photo booth strip with Anna where I look like I just heard good news. It was my life. A shot of the clinic sign with a kid's chalk doodle of 2 stick figures shaking hands. We left the last page blank. "For when the story surprises us," Milo said. He looked suddenly shy, then braver. "Do you want to see another storefront tomorrow? It's 2 doors down from the clinic. The landlord is patient. There's light for miles. It could be a second shop. Or whatever you want it to be." I imagined a studio with a work table big enough for ridiculous dreams, a class space for people who wanted to arrange forgiveness and dahlias side by side, a shelf of tiny envelopes for words strangers needed. I imagined a bell that chimed like soft applause. "Yes," I said, and the page turned itself. The second shop became a studio before it became anything else. We painted walls with laughter-spattered rollers, bought a table long enough to seat strangers who might someday be friends, and stacked shelves with jars waiting for words. People drifted in curious. A teacher who wanted to learn how to arrange forgiveness, a retiree who asked if he could volunteer to sweep petals just to feel useful, a teenager who came with earbuds and left with a bouquet of courage. Milo spent evenings perched on the window ledge, laptop balanced, while I taught small classes in tying ribbons and untying regret. Sometimes our spaces, his clinic and my shop, shared clients. A couple who solved a dispute over fence lines at the clinic brought their daughter to arrange sunflowers as apology. I watched them laugh with gluey fingers and knew we were living inside a circle of repair. At night, when we closed the shutters, Milo would spin me slowly around the studio floor, saying, "Every good building deserves a dance." And I thought, so does every good lie that turned out to be a truth. Anna and her new husband invited us on a double date, a hike that turned into a picnic by a stream that made its own choir. Watching her marriage unfold like early spring made me ache in the sweetest way. "You two are disgustingly cute," she said, shoving grapes into her husband's mouth. "I half want to punch you, half want to write you into a romance novel." Milo rolled his eyes but squeezed my hand. Later, when the others wandered off to photograph wildflowers, he whispered, "She doesn't know I'm already writing one."
What?
I blinked. He shrugged, sheepish. "Notes. Fragments. The way you wrinkle your nose when tasting soup, the way you arrange chairs to face windows, the way you walk into a room and make it sigh." I didn't want to forget any of it. I felt something settle in me, like books pushed flush on a shelf. No one had ever wanted to record me except in their own version of my silence. "Promise me I can read it someday." He kissed my temple.
Promise.
"But only if you add your chapters." Life stretched into softer seasons. There were weeks where nothing dramatic happened, where we argued about groceries and made up by cooking together, where the clinic paperwork overwhelmed Milo and I bribed him with pie to keep going, where customers cried over flowers and left lighter than they came. Those weeks were the marrow. Ordinary days that glowed not because of spectacle, but because of presence. I learned to stop looking for signs that the other shoe would drop. I had enough shoes now to build a closet of stability. Then one morning, he appeared at the shop with that grin, half mischief, half inevitability, and said, "Come with me." He walked me to the library cafe, now busier than ever with its word drawer nearly overflowing. The librarian smiled knowingly and slid the drawer toward me. Inside was a single new card, written in his firm hand. "Will you renegotiate forever?" I turned. He was already on one knee, not with a ring but with the napkin frame's twin, another ridiculous gilt, holding a new contract. It read, "Clause 1. Let's keep choosing this." My yes echoed like bells. We told the story at a small engagement dinner. The napkin passed around like a relic. Friends laughed. Anna cried. Mara kissed our foreheads like a blessing. The florist's fridge hummed at home, full of blooms waiting for tomorrow's brides, but tonight the flowers were ours. Wild mix of roses and eucalyptus, stubborn sunflowers Milo insisted on because they look like optimism that refuses to sit down. As the night closed, Mara gave us her album box again. "Add this page yourselves," she said. "Your handwriting belongs here." We filled it with Polaroids, me laughing too hard, him trying to look suave but failing, Anna photobombing with a wine glass. On the last one, I wrote across the white border. We began as a lie, but every sentence after was the truth. And maybe that's what love is. The boldness to write contracts in pencil, to amend clauses without shame, to let the footnotes hold more tenderness than the headline. Milo kissed the side of my face and said, "Consider this clause permanent." The wedding we planned for ourselves was never going to be grand, at least not in the glittering ballroom sense. We wanted something stitched together with memory. Milo suggested the library cafe where it all began, but Anna argued for my flower shop. In the end, we compromised. Vows in the cafe, reception among blooms. The librarian cried when we asked. "People start novels here," she said. "It's fitting that you're making one you can live in." I designed the bouquets myself, even though tradition says the bride shouldn't. But this wasn't tradition, it was an amendment. Milo spent nights tinkering with playlists until every song felt like a page turning. Our friends helped hang lights across the alley between cafe and shop, transforming asphalt into constellation. On the morning of, I stood behind the counter, smoothing petals with shaking hands. Milo appeared with mandarins, just like the day he steadied me with fruit. "Breathe," he whispered, pressing one into my palm. The peel's fragrance anchored me. When the doors opened and I stepped into the library's aisle, the drawer still sat in its corner, overflowing with strangers' hopes. Ours was just another word among them, and yet the truest one. Vows felt like handwriting, unpolished, personal, trembling. I promised to keep noticing the small things, to treat silence as language, to share pie even when I didn't want to. He promised to tell the truth early, to hold my hand when doors creaked open, to keep our contracts alive by always renegotiating with tenderness. When the officiant asked for rings, we pulled out the napkin frames, his mine both ridiculous and gold. We tied new vows inside, fresh ink that would age with us. Laughter bubbled through the guests, and in that moment, humor felt as holy as any hymn. The kiss was not a performance. It was a sentence we'd been writing for months, finally punctuated. Applause roared in the cafe, bouncing off the bookshelves. Strangers peeked in through the window, smiling at the audacity of love declared among espresso machines and half-finished novels. We danced later in the flower shop, lights tangled in roses overhead. Anna made a toast about lies becoming truths, and Mara clasped my hands with eyes shining like forgiveness. I looked at Milo and thought, this is what forever feels like, handwritten, imperfect, alive. Marriage, of course, did not make us flawless. It made us accountable. There were nights when exhaustion picked fights we didn't mean, mornings when dishes sat stubbornly in the sink, weeks when the clinic threatened to eat Milo whole. But the difference now was that we had tools and clauses and a deep, unshakable willingness to return to the table. The shop became more than business. People started leaving notes there too, tucked between bouquets. Tell her I miss her. Remind me to forgive myself. This arrangement is for my grandmother. She taught me how to be soft. I kept them in a jar labeled Petals of the Heart. Milo teased me, but once I caught him reading them slowly, reverently, as if each was a treaty waiting to be honored. One evening, after a brutal day where every client at the clinic seemed intent on shouting, he collapsed into the shop chair. "Why do I do this?" he asked, voice frayed. I handed him a note from the jar. It read, "Because even broken things deserve gardeners." He wept without shame. I held him, petals brushing our shoulders, and whispered, "That's why we do this." Our first anniversary came with rain, the good kind that polishes sidewalks. Milo insisted on recreating the farmer's market story we'd invented, so we walked to the stalls, bought late peaches, and argued about fitted sheets again, just to honor the legend. People stared at us laughing under dripping awnings, but we didn't care. Back home, he surprised me with a gift, a scrapbook of all our contracts, big and small. The napkin, the framed vows, a grocery list where we'd negotiated jam flavors, a sticky note with geranium, written in hurried ink from a day we nearly fell apart but didn't. "These are our treaties," he said, "proof that love is legal in more ways than one." I gave him a different gift, a framed photo of the library drawer, still stuffed with strangers' notes. On the back I'd written, "Our beginning never ends. It keeps collecting." He kissed me until the rain outside felt like it belonged to us too. Anna had her first baby that year, a daughter with cheeks like warm bread. Watching Milo cradle her, whispering nonsense about peace treaties and bedtime stories, made me imagine our own possible pages. I didn't rush the thought, but I folded it away for later, like a seed packet waiting for spring. Mara, meanwhile, softened in ways even she didn't expect. She joined me for flower deliveries, learned how to cut stems underwater, confessed one afternoon in the van, "I was afraid no one would ever stay with my son." "I see now you're not staying. You're building." Her words landed like sunlight on soil I hadn't realized was still cold. That night, I told Milo. He kissed my forehead and said, "She's learning too. We're all still drafting." I laughed, realizing how much of our love was built on drafts, revisions, margin notes. Maybe every marriage is a manuscript, and the trick is to keep writing, even when the ink smudges. Years later, when people asked how we began, we never gave the short version. We told them about lies that turned into lifelines, about contracts on napkins, about a cafe drawer that became a lighthouse for strangers. We told them about mandarins and geraniums, about treaties framed in thrift store gold, about the way ordinary days saved us more than extraordinary ones. And always, I added, we started by pretending. But love doesn't care what door you enter through, as long as you're brave enough to stay inside. Milo would nod, squeeze my hand, and say, Clause 1 still stands. Keep choosing this. The story never stopped being written because every Thursday at 4, someone new left a word in the drawer. And every time we peeked inside, we were reminded, the world keeps negotiating for tenderness. And so did we. The second year of our marriage brought subtle shifts, like the seasons teaching us new textures of patience. The clinic flourished, too quickly sometimes. And Milo worked late hours soothing disputes that wore him down like river stones. I, too, found myself swamped with wedding orders that turned the shop into a jungle of stems and silence. We passed each other like trains some evenings, love unspoken not because it had dimmed, but because exhaustion pressed it flat. One night, he arrived at the shop just as I was locking up. He carried takeout and 2 mandarins. Clause check, he said softly. We said no weaponizing silence. I leaned against the doorframe, tired enough to cry, and whispered, Geranium. We sat on the curb, eating noodles out of cartons, rain steaming off the pavement. He kissed soy sauce off my cheek, and I laughed until my shoulders unclenched. Sometimes forever is built not in grand gestures, but in small recalibrations. We wrote a new clause that night on the back of the receipt. If we can't find words, we will share food first. Talking tastes easier with warm mouths. We both signed. Our circle widened. The library drawer became a pilgrimage for strangers, a ritual passed from student to friend, neighbor to traveler. The barista started leaving blank journals on the shelf labeled ongoing treaties. People filled them with confessions, promises, poetry, even apologies that couldn't find their intended ears. We read some together on Thursdays, tears mixing with laughter. One entry made us pause. I stayed in a relationship too long because I didn't know how to renegotiate. Thank you for showing me it's possible. The handwriting was anonymous, but the weight was real. Milo touched the page and said, if we helped even one person choose better, then every awkward dinner, every fake smile, was worth it. Later, Anna teased us that we were becoming urban folklore. Couples whispered about the library drawer like it was enchanted. I didn't mind. Folklore is just truth passed down with better lighting. It was Anna's daughter who gave us our next adventure. At 5 years old, she toddled into my shop with a serious face and declared, I need to make flowers for Daddy, because he works too much. I helped her tie daisies with ribbon, and when Milo came by later, she presented them with solemn pride. You need more color, she scolded. Milo knelt to her height, thanked her with courtly grace, and then turned to me. She's right. I've been drowning in gray. We decided then to take our first true break, 2 weeks in a cabin near the river we once dreamed about. No Wi-Fi, no contracts, just air and pine. We read books aloud, burned pancakes, painted each other's faces with berry juice. Milo taught me chess. I taught him how to whistle with grass. On the final night, we lay on the dock, stars spilling like spilled ink, and he whispered, I want a child with your laugh. My heart clenched with both fear and wonder. I kissed him slow, promising nothing yet, but promising possibility. Back in the city, life resumed its steady pulse. The shop expanded. The clinic took on new mediators. We navigated the conversation about children carefully, like balancing glass. I wasn't ready yet, but the thought no longer scared me. Instead, it hummed in the background like a song waiting for its chorus. Meanwhile, Evan's shadow finally disappeared for good. A police report and firm boundaries had ended his reach. One day I realized I hadn't thought of him in months. The relief was like breathing in a new house where no one had ever raised their voice. Milo noticed. "You look lighter," he said, handing me coffee. I smiled, realizing he was right. Some ghosts fade quietly when you stop rehearsing their lines. That evening, I slipped a note into the library drawer. "I forgive myself for staying too long, and I forgive myself for leaving." No one signed it, but I knew it was mine. And for the first time, the forgiveness didn't ache. It simply sat beside me, companionable, like an old friend who had finally put down their luggage. On our 3rd anniversary, we hosted dinner at the shop, tables pushed between displays, candles flickering in mason jars. Family and friends filled every chair, laughter mingling with the scent of roses and roasted vegetables. Anna raised a glass and teased, "I still can't believe you two tricked us all. Best con job I've ever seen." Mara laughed, adding, "If that was a con, I hope everyone gets conned once in their lives." Later, as the guests thinned, Milo pulled me aside. He carried a small wooden box. Inside lay slips of paper, each one a clause we had written over the years. Napkin scribbles, receipts, sticky notes, even a chalk scrawl on the clinic wall. He had saved them all. "I thought tonight we could draft one more," he said. I unfolded the blank slip, my hand trembling. Together we wrote, "If tomorrow looks different than today, we will choose each other again in that light." We signed, sealing it with a kiss that tasted like new beginnings and old promises both. By the time our 4th anniversary arrived, the shop had become a landmark. People no longer just asked for bouquets, they came to be part of the story. A couple from another city stopped in, clutching a screenshot of the library drawer they'd seen online. "We heard this is where it started," they whispered, shy but hopeful. I showed them the framed napkin treaty, our absurd beginning, and their eyes welled up. "If you can build forever from pretend," the woman said, "maybe we can too." Milo watched the exchange quietly, his hand sliding into mine. Later, on the walk home, he murmured, "Do you ever feel like we've become stewards of something bigger than us?" I nodded. It felt humbling and strange, like inheriting a garden planted generations ago, only to realize the seeds were your own. That night, we tucked a new clause into our box. "We will protect our story, but not hoard it. Love grows stronger when shared." The conversation about children returned one Sunday morning while we were making pancakes. Milo flipped one lopsided and grinned. "Imagine a kid laughing at how bad I am at this." I laughed too, but this time the idea didn't feel like a storm cloud. It felt like sunlight pressing gently on a closed bud. We started speaking of someday more often. Someday, we'd need a bigger table. Someday, there would be more photographs for the album. Someday, there might be tiny hands tugging at our sleeves during library Thursdays. These were not promises, just sketches. And sketches, we'd learned, often became blueprints when tended. That afternoon, I wrote a note for the drawer. Some days, bravery is saying not yet. Some days, bravery is saying maybe. When I returned later in the week, someone had replied in different handwriting. "Maybe is the soil where yes can grow." I showed it to Milo. He kissed me slow, as if we'd just watered a secret garden. Mara grew closer during those years. She became my unofficial delivery partner, always riding shotgun with a thermos of tea and a playlist of old ballads. She had softened into someone I could laugh with, even about the weather she once embodied. "I'm trying to retire from storms," she said, chuckling as she taped delivery slips to vases. One day, while carrying armfuls of tulips, she paused outside the clinic window. Inside, Milo was listening intently to two men arguing about property lines. His posture was steady, his hands folded loosely, his whole being tuned to hear what lay beneath their words. Mara whispered, "He looks just like his father when he finally found his calling. That's a gift you gave him. Room to arrive." I swallowed the lump in my throat and whispered back, "He gave me the same." We stood for a moment, tulips heavy in our arms, both of us mothers in our own ways, her of Milo, me of the life we were still shaping. The 5th anniversary was quieter. We didn't host a dinner or plan a trip. Instead, we spent the day writing letters to each other, sealed in envelopes we promised not to open until our 10th. Milo wrote at the clinic desk. I wrote among roses. When we sealed the envelopes, I felt a thrill of patience, knowing that love can stretch across time like a bridge, waiting for us to cross it later. That evening, we walked to the library cafe, drawers still bustling with notes. I slipped in a card. Forever isn't one decision. It's Thursday at 4, again and again. Milo added another. If you find this in 10 years, know that someone kept choosing. We left hand in hand, the drawer behind us glowing faintly in lamplight, as if holding our vows alongside everyone else's. The night air smelled of eucalyptus and bread, and I realized, sometimes anniversaries don't need fireworks. Sometimes the quiet is the celebration. Life surprised us, as it always does. Anna's daughter, now 7, asked me one day, "When will you and Uncle Milo have a cousin for me?" I stammered, caught between laughter and tears. Later, Milo and I talked long into the night. "Are we ready?" he asked. The truth sat between us. Maybe not fully, but maybe enough. A month later, I stood in the shop bathroom, staring at a test that answered for me. My hands shook, my breath tumbled, but when I told Milo, his face broke into the kind of smile that makes a life. He pulled me close and whispered, "Clause infinity. Whatever comes, we meet it together." We didn't announce it right away. We let this secret settle in our bones, just us two, before telling Anna and Mara. But already, I felt our story tilting again, toward lullabies and sleepless nights, toward new clauses yet unwritten. The library drawer would soon hold a word I hadn't dared leave before. Parent. We decided to end this chapter where it began, at the library cafe, Thursday at 4. Mara walked between us with a thermos and 3 mandarins for tradition. Anna arrived late on purpose, claiming babies don't understand punctuality yet, and we should practice. In my arms, our son, still new enough to smell like warm paper and summer rain, slept with the absolute confidence of someone who has never been disappointed by a door. The drawer waited. It had grown scuffed and noble over the years, the way useful things do. The librarian wiped a corner with her sleeve, as if straightening a collar before a photograph. People made space without being asked. They'd learned the choreography of tender crowds. Milo set the napkin frame on the counter like an honored elder. I placed a tiny envelope into the heart of the drawer, handwritten in a careful, wobbly script because my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Inside it, a single card. Begin again. Milo slid an arm around my waist. "Clause infinity still holds," he whispered against my hair. "Whatever comes, we meet it together." Our son hiccuped, then sighed, a miniature punctuation mark approving our sentence. I thought of the nights we'd already weathered, milk sour and soft, both of us clumsy with awe, of the first time I saw Milo cry because a lullaby worked and the world obeyed for once, of the way the apartment rearranged itself gladly to fit a bassinet, and new kinds of courage. We passed mandarins like sacraments. Mara told the baby, "I retired from Storm's little one," and he blinked solemnly as if accepting her resignation. Anna took a photo of our hands, his palm beneath mine, mine beneath our son's, the napkin frame shining in the background like a ridiculous, perfect halo. The cafe bell chimed, that small applause that has followed us through every amendment, and a stranger near the door whispered to their companion, "Look, that must be them." I didn't turn. Folklore can keep its distance. I wanted only the quiet, private miracle of 3 heartbeats choosing the same rhythm. Before we left, I added one more clause to our box, written crooked, my handwriting smudged by happy tears. If we forget, we will come here and remember. We will take what we need, leave what we can, and keep writing the margins. Milo signed it, then pressed the pen gently to our son's fist. He gripped the barrel with fierce newborn dignity, as if to say he would add his clauses when he learned how. Outside, evening folded the street in a blue that promised rest. We walked slow, the world suddenly full of benches I'd never noticed and lights that knew when to soften. At the corner, I looked back through the window, the drawer gleaming, the librarian humming, strangers choosing words for themselves, and felt the tender click of a story finding its last period for now. "Home?" Milo asked.
Home, I said.
And the door, faithful as ever, opened. The first weeks at home felt like living inside a soft bell. Every sound was round: kettle, rain, the small bleats our son made when his dreams turned corners. We named him Orion because Milo liked the idea of a constellation you can always find if you know how to look up. The name felt too big for such tiny fingers, but babies grow into skies. Nights were a collage of glows: the fridge light, the hallway lamp, the dim constellations of the white noise machine. We created a brand new treaty, scribbled at 3:11 a.m. on the back of a burp cloth. If one of us is drowning, the other becomes the shore. If both are drowning, we call Anna. At sunrise, we laughed at it and signed anyway. Visitors came bearing lasagnas and opinions. Mara learned to hum the bottle warm. Anna taught us the miracle of the 2-minute shower. I watched Milo stand at the window with Orion on his shoulder, the city moving below like a kind animal, and understood a new variety of tenderness, the kind that is heavy and gladly carried. The drawer became a baptism of sorts. On our first Thursday walk as 3, we stopped at the library cafe, where it all began. We didn't make a scene, just pressed our palms to the scratched wood, the way you greet an old friend. Inside, I slipped a note that read, "His name is Orion. He sleeps like a poem and eats like a thesis." Someone had left a reply before we even arrived. "Welcome, small star." At home, we built a rhythm that was less schedule and more tied. Some afternoons, Milo wore Orion in a sling while mediating on video, his voice lower and slower, conflicts untying themselves under the gravity of a sleeping infant. At the shop, I discovered babies make excellent quality control inspectors. Orion could spot a crooked ribbon at 20 paces. We added a clause to the box: "We will forgive the version of us that doesn't know this yet." It covered the sleepless mistakes and the learning curve that felt like hiking a mountain with a laundry basket. Sleep deprivation revealed new rooms in us, some lovely, some needing paint. There were nights when I cried because the zipper on the sleeper fought me, and mornings when Milo apologized for snoring like a trombone in a marching band no one invited. "Geranium," I whispered into his shoulder at dawn, and he took the next shift without commentary. One small scare taught us to hold time differently. Orion spiked a fever at 2 months, the digital thermometer flashing a number I'd never wanted to memorize. The air smelled like lemon and nerves. A nurse with moon earrings touched my arm. "Babies bounce," she said, kind and competent. She was right. Tests came back clean. But in that fluorescent waiting room, we wrote a new clause on my phone. "When fear borrows the microphone, we will fact-check with love." On the walk home, the city looked gentler, as if the streetlights had dimmed themselves in solidarity. We slept in shifts that night and woke to our boy grinning like Dawn had told him a joke. Orion's first laugh happened at the most dignified stimulus. Milo sneezed and scared our houseplant. The sound cracked open the ceiling. We celebrated like champions, filming calling Anna, sending a clip to Mara, and then watching the 15-second miracle 14 times. The clinic adapted around our new life. Milo hired a second mediator, Jules, who calibrated silence with surgeon precision. With support, he began leaving at 4 on Thursdays again so we could honor the drawer. I arranged a parents and peonies workshop where new moms and dads made wild bouquets while trading hacks about swaddles and sanity. A dad with tattoo sleeves cried when he learned to spiral stems. "I didn't know I needed to be gentle with something that wouldn't break me back," he said. We all nodded like a choir. At bedtime, I tucked Orion's tiny hand around the edge of the napkin frame on our shelf. He gurgled, serious as a clerk approving a seal. "He's learning clauses early," Milo whispered. I kissed both of their foreheads and decided there are worse languages to inherit than tenderness. Date night returned disguised as errands. We made a game of it. Drop off an arrangement at the theater, split a lemon tart on the curb out front, wander past the river to see which bench looked most like a conversation. We called it the 40-minute forever. It was not glamorous, but it was ours. One night, the river wore moonlight like silk. Milo said, "Do you ever miss the version of us who slept past 7? Sure, I said. I also miss being 22 and able to eat gas station sushi without consequence. But I like who we're becoming more. He nodded, relieved. Me too. We wrote a clause on a ticket stub and tucked it into the box when we got home. If romance feels small, we will shrink the room until it fits. The room that night was a kitchen lit by the fridge, our shoulders touching, a lemon tart forked into even halves without measuring. Orion discovered the library drawer the way all great explorers do, by reaching for something he wasn't supposed to and being gently allowed to touch it anyway. The librarian, now part of our extended universe, pulled out a blank card. For the youngest author, she said. Milo helped Orion smudge a thumbprint on it. We labeled it Star. We began leaving tiny prompts for the city. Tell someone thank you twice. Clean one corner you've been ignoring, externally or internally. People responded with stories that made our hair stand on affectionate end. A paramedic left. I changed my route home to walk past the drawer. It keeps my shift from following me. That night we drafted another clause. Community is a room in our house. We will dust it. It meant yes to block parties, yes to babysitting swaps, yes to Jules using the studio on weekends to teach free conflict skills to teenagers. Our life had become a generous vandalism, graffiti of kindness scribbled on every wall we had permission to touch. Not all days sparkled. There was the Tuesday when every delivery ran late. Orion cut a tooth with great dramatic flair, and the clinic's boiler died mid-mediation. We triaged with gallows humor. Add a clause? Milo asked over the whine of a space heater. I grinned, delirious. We will name the day. Naming removes some bite. We wrote it down. This was the Tuesday of too much. The act of labeling took the teeth out of the day. We went to bed in truce with the universe. Morning brought a quiet victory. Orion's first roll from back to belly, accomplished with the determination of a tiny mountain climber. He looked stunned by his own agency. We cheered like fans at a final. The Tuesday of too much already felt like a story that happened to other people. We planned a small ceremony we jokingly called the renegotiation of forever, inviting only the handful who had signed our margins with us. Anna, Mara, Jules, the librarian, the barista who'd been there since the beginning. At the cafe, we replaced the drawer's worn felt, polished the brass pull, and slid in a new header card. Begin again. Everyone brought a clause. Anna contributed. Laugh before the punchline. Mara added. Risk sunny days. Jules wrote. Hear the thing beneath the thing. We tucked them into a new box labeled Amendments Adopted by Love and ate a mandarin cake that tasted like dawn. When it was our turn, Milo took my hands and said, Clause 1, then, and now. Keep choosing this. I answered, Clause 2. Keep remembering why. Our son clapped like an officiant who approved the proceedings. On the eve of Orion's first birthday, I found the original napkin in its frame and noticed a coffee ring overlapping our signatures. Imperfection, sealed. It comforted me. We'd never been pristine. We'd been practiced. I added a tiny note to the glass. Thank you for getting us started. We celebrated in the alley between the shop and cafe, the string lights humming like old friends. Neighborhood kids chased bubbles. The clinic crew dismantled and rebuilt a used grill with improbable optimism, and the librarian led a toast with paper cups. I looked around at our improbable village, how a fake thing became a true home, and felt gratitude knock on every window of my ribs. When the last guest left, Milo and I stood under the dimming bulbs, swaying to a song only we could hear. We didn't just fall in love, he murmured. We kept landing. Let's keep landing, I said, and we kissed. Tired, happy, absolutely here. A year to the day after Orion's birth, we returned to the drawer with a final offering for this chapter. I slid in a folded card. If you need a sign, this is to begin. Again. Milo added another beneath it. If you need permission, take ours. We walked home through a city that had learned our names and given us its own. At the door, I paused, key warm in my palm, and thought of every clause we'd written. Napkins, receipts, burp cloths, ticket stubs, the polished wood of a drawer that waylaid our lives and sent them on a kinder route. Inside, Orion babbled at the framed treaty, like he was reading it back to us. The apartment smelled faintly of eucalyptus and something baking in the neighbor's oven. I set down my keys, looked at Milo, and felt the old, faithful click of choosing. "Ready for the next chapter?" he asked. I smiled. "Always. And we can renegotiate whenever we want." He laughed, pulled me close, and the door, the same door that has never once failed us, opened onto a home that keeps making room.